Welcome to the Left of Str8 Show, your one-stop destination for intriguing conversations with extraordinary individuals who are boldly navigating life outside the conventional norms. Our host, Scott Fullerton, is thrilled to embark on this journey of discovery with all of you. The Left of Str8 Show, we believe that every person's story is unique, and it's our mission to showcase the diversity of human experiences. We bring you the untold stories of fascinating people who identify as LGBT+ and allies, pushing boundaries, breaking stereotypes, and making a positive impact in our communities. On this show, we bring you a diverse lineup of inspiring guests, from activists to artists, and entrepreneurs to entertainers, and everything in between. We dive deep into their personal journeys, discovering the pivotal moment that has shaped their lives and careers. You can expect thought-provoking discussions on a wide range of topics, from LGBTQ rights, social justice to arts, culture, mental health, and more. Our guests are change makers who share their insights, challenges, and triumphs, igniting conversation that promotes empathy, understanding, and love. So whether you're part of the LGBTQ community or an ally looking to expand your knowledge and show your support, the Left of Str8 Show is for you. Together, we can build bridges of understanding and acceptance, celebrating the beauty of what makes us all unique. So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for the show.
Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to another interview here on the Left of Str8 Show, where I talk to celebrities and personalities all about entertainment, foodies, books, music, and advocacy, all of interest to our LGBTQ community and our straight allies. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and the worlds of writing and music are colliding today with my next guest. JD Doyle is a gay historian and archivist, both in music and gay life, whom I ran across in some of my social media postings a couple weeks ago. Turns out we have a Northeast Ohio connection here. It made me dig just a little bit deeper and found out that we grew up just about 15 to 20 miles from each other. He went to school down the road at Youngstown State University, which I love going to. I was part of their Gay Student Alliance for a while, even though I didn't attend there. I helped out because I was the chairman of our Pride Center. So I quickly reached out to JD, and here we are today. He's been studying gay history and a few big projects. He created the Queer Music Heritage Station, which he helmed until 2015. He's created the Houston LGBTQhistory.org, the Texas Obituary Project, the Banner Project. We're going to talk all about those, but I especially wanted to have him on today because he has a new book that just came out titled 1981, My Gay American Road Trip. It's a collection of journals he wrote in his early 30s, and as he traveled across the country, that brings over 300 pages of experience in gay life in cities across the country. I'm looking forward to talking about this and so much more. So please welcome to Left of Str8 Show for the very first time, Mr. JD Doyle. Jay, thanks for thanking me through for all that introduction. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Scott, for having me.
I appreciate having you on. Like I said, I came across another interview you did the other day, and I thought, wow, this sounds interesting. I am a little bit younger than you. I graduated, though, in 1982 in Los Angeles, so I know a lot of the areas that you went to there. So that was a lot of fun for me. Plus, like I said, we have this local connection. So thanks for coming on the show.
I'm glad to be here.
I always ask two questions of all of my first time virgins on the show. So I'm going to do a variation of the second one. But for the first one, talk about growing up here in Northeast Ohio. What kind of a kid were you and what was it like here?
I was a closeted nerd. No, I didn't come out until very, very late. I was actually 30 and well established. I was already living in Rochester, New York. I was already working as an engineer. I was, for many years, processing in my head being gay, but really not doing anything about it. So I was only out to me. So that took a while, longer than it should have, but this was the 70s. So it was slower then.
A lot different, especially in Ohio. Ohio's gone through a pendulum. I didn't get here until think 98 or 2000, right around there. And it used to be very conservative. Then it got a little less so when Strickland came in, and now it's pendulum swinging back the other way to a lot more conservative. Was Did you feel that conservative bent when you were growing up?
I don't think so. I was in Salem, Ohio, a town of 12,000. A very nice town. I got a good education. I have no complaints about that. Uh, Being gay was really not in the consciousness of that time. I was in high school, graduated in 65. So early 60s, it just wasn't talked about. So therefore, I had no mentors, no role models. Of course, there was no internet, no cell phones, none of that. So you had to kind of figure it out or wait.
Right. Definitely understand that. And a lot of your coming out journey, of course, is in the book that we're going to talk all about here in the second half. But a couple things from the book that was intrigued by. When this is airing, I think next week will be about a week before the Canfield Fair that has been huge here forever. You talk about an experience you had at the Canfield Fair. You also talk about an experience in school of someone yelling out the word queer. So you had kind of inklings as to what it meant, just nothing really profound, right?
Right. I was tuned in enough to recognize and obviously remember those events many, many years later. So they made an impression on me, even though I wasn't quite sure what to do with that.
Did you go to the Canfield Fair every year? Was that a big thing back then?
Uh, it was only 10 miles from Salem, Ohio.
Right.
So I don't know if we went every year. It was kind of the same thing every year, but it was a nice fair. It was good. Uh, yeah.
Did they have the Super Nats out in Salem when you were here? Was that still a big thing? That's a big
The
in the
what?
summer. The Super Nat, the racing, the drag racing or whatever.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's a big thing that's happened now in Salem recently here. So very interesting stuff. Do you still have connections here? I know being from here, your parents were here for a long time. Anyone still in your life connected to the Northeast Ohio area?
My brother lives in Struthers,
Okay,
so that's close to you. I looked it up.
right
So
around the corner.
and I have aunts, not aunts and uncles. They're all deceased, but the cousins, lots of cousins.
Nice. Yeah, Struthers is exactly right around the corner from where I'm at in Poland, Ohio here. So I know right where that is at. Well, very good. We're going to get into the book in detail because I really did love it. Thank you very much for sending me a copy. I was able to, you teased me. I said I was going to read the whole thing. You were right. I couldn't get through the whole thing. There's over 300 pages to this puppy, but I did read the beginning and the ending and your thoughts on it. And of course, I read all about LA and San Francisco and San Diego because that's my neck of the woods where I grew
Mhm.
up. But let's start with some of your other stuff that you did. I want to talk about your interest in music. When did that first come about? How did you get this love of music?
Um, Probably high school, and I think from high school I moved to after college at Youngstown State. I got a job in Rochester, New York for Kodak. Shortly after that, I became a serious record collector, and I
Hmm.
had friends who did the same. So we ran around, went to record shows together, and I got quite an advanced collection because I was aggressive and I knew I was focused and I knew how to do it. I knew where to find stuff, and it was quite a lot, thousands of records over the years, over the 70s and 80s. I kept changing the collections. I would sell some, but I would buy other stuff. In the 80s, I was a collector of girl group music, like the Chiffons, the Angels, the Ronettes, of course, and hundreds no one ever heard of. And so I would have those records, and I was kind of like almost internationally known as an expert in that area. And then I sold those. But every time I sold a collection, I always kept the queer stuff. And sometimes there wasn't a lot of queer stuff to have because they weren't singing lyrically gay things at that time. Very few. You'd have to really research it as a story, which I did later.
Right.
Uh, I guess I can jump ahead to moving to Houston and starting the radio show. That's jumping quite a bit ahead. In January of 2000, I got a chance to do a segment on a local Pacifica station, KPFT. The show is called Queer Voices. My show is called Queer Music Heritage, and it was on every month. And I did history, and really, I don't think anybody else has done it that way. Not that I've ever ran across it. I would have, because I was tuned in. So I was after interviewing the artists, the pioneers, capturing these interviews, and some of these folks have left us now. So that's important to gather that together. I did that for 15 years. Can't hardly believe it. And all of those shows are archived on my website, queermusicheritage.com, because it was important not just to do a show and have it air once. No, that's not good. It's got to be forever. It's got to be accessible. So Google can find, oh, you did an interview with a lesbian artist named Frank. Oh, I can listen to it. Great, do that. So, and I captured all sorts of categories of music, from hip hop to Christian music to disco, of course, to the various artists of women's music. I was really heavy on women's music. I was really heavy on the music of transgender artists. One year I did, I think, 5 shows in a row on transgender artists. I was just like, I was on a roll. I wanted to capture as much as I could. And not only did I capture the music, I was talking to them so I could ask them about their journeys. Not just tell me about this song, what motivated that song. So this was good stuff to capture. After about 15 years, I was kind of moving on in my head and decided to start the history website at HoustonLGBThistory.org. And that's grown and grown and grown. Between my 3 sites, I have probably 20,000 pages, which sounds ridiculous, but that's what the index counter says. So I've been capturing publications, pride, politics, everything. The bar information, the business information, information about AIDS, different subjects, very thoroughly. At the same time, like a masochist, I started the Texas Obituary Project because I wanted to honor the people we lost in Texas. And it was so, while of course it was mostly AIDS oriented, it was an LGBTQ site. And any cause of death, just so they lived in Texas or had lived in Texas. So there's like over 8,000 obituaries, totally searchable, because you got to be able to find stuff. And it's searchable, like if you could say, oh, what was the name of that guy that died 10 years ago? His lover was Frank something. Try looking up Frank, and you might find a cross-reference, because if I knew their lover's name or husband's name or wife's name, now you can search for that. You can find all the Franks. You can say, well, I think it was 2010. 2010, you probably will find who Frank's deceased lover was. So it's set up for researchers.
That's amazing. And you also have the Banner Project included in that. What's the Banner Project?
I helped with that. My friend Sarah Fernandez was the founder of that. She came up with the idea. She had seen a display in New York of big vinyl banners of history. She said, oh, we should do that. So she came back and got a bunch of historians interested in helping her for the beginning of that project. And actually, frankly, at first, I thought I was dragging my feet because I was already doing 2 other websites. And no, don't get me involved. I can't do this. No. But of course, I did. So I'm like a third of that project now. We also have a designer who does terrific work. His name is Kirk Baxter. And between the 3 of us, we've done 49 banners, and they're on display at places like the University of Houston, the Montrose Center. They've been at basketball games, soccer games, not just gay places, but places. So sports events, it's getting the word out in a pleasing visual way. They're colorful banners. They're like 30 inches by 6 feet. And there's a smaller set of banners at the Montrose Center. We're getting ready to do our last banner. We decided number 50 will be the last one, and that'll debut in the fall for Coming Out Day.
Nice. That's fantastic. And it's not like this is not being taken note of. We're talking all these 20,000 pages are now archived in the Library of Congress. That's an amazing feat. Talk about how that came about.
They surprised me. I didn't even know they were thinking about it. I got an email, hey, we would like to monitor your websites, and I guess their procedure is to grab certain pages periodically as time goes on, and build sort of a grid. I'm not sure of these different sites. It's not the only site they're doing, so they're doing my sites, and it's like, wow, this is amazing, and it's important because the music one, for example, I played hundreds of artists who never got played on the radio, never. And so they have no recognition. Well, 100 years from now, their grandkids will be able to look them up and say, oh, grandma was on this radio show. Like, oh, that makes me feel so good.
That's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I've taken an interest. I was never a music guy before, but I've taken an interest since I started the show 8 years ago of talking to queer independent musical artists, and it really is fascinating the stories because you don't hear them get told. The internet now helps you know about them a little bit more because the internet and social media is out there. What was your first album you ever collected? Do you remember?
First gay album?
Either, yeah.
Well, in general, I have no idea. You're talking the 60s, and I probably don't have too many of those original ones left. The first gay album might have been the Tom Robinson Band. He did Glad to Be Gay, the anthem.
Right. And how do you go about storing all this album collection? Do you still have them? Do you still have them stored? How do
Oh,
you
yeah.
keep them preserved?
I have a room I'm in a townhouse. On the third floor is wall-to-wall CD racks, and also a big cabinet with CDs. And there's a walk-in closet, maybe 12 feet long, with a shelf for albums and 78s and cassette tapes. Remember cassette tapes?
Yeah,
Tapes were
way
important
back in the
because
day.
from like 87 to 92 or 3, that was the accessible means of getting an artist getting their music out there because they couldn't afford to do vinyl. CDs weren't really in place yet. So this is how they could cheaply do it. And sometimes that's the only way you can find that music is on cassettes.
I am old enough that my very first album I bought was Captain and Tennille, Love Will Keep Us Together on 8-track tape.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was back in the day when I was doing that. So I remember those things. That's
I have a
very cool.
couple 8-tracks just for novelty purposes. I never had an 8-track player. I kind of skipped over that at that time.
Yeah, they weren't around very long at all. They went very quickly to being out of style, and cassettes were all the big thing until
And they changed tracks in the middle of songs.
right.
It's like, that's not good.
Especially in cars, they tried to put them in cars, I think, for a
Uh,
while.
yeah,
And anytime you hit a bump, they would go. You're right. I remember that now. That's funny. All right, well, I want to get into this book because it's so near and dear to my heart because like I said, I graduated in 82. So 81 and 82, I remember very well going out and about, and I had this damn mustache since I was 13, so I looked a lot older than I was and got to get into a lot of places where I probably shouldn't back then. But the book is called 1981: My Gay American Road Trip. Right there behind you over your shoulder has a fantastic cover we'll talk about in a bit. This is based on journals you were taking at the time, and a lot of it's the actual text from the journals. Were you always a journal writer, or how did this come about that you
Actually,
had
this was the only time I did that during that trip.
really?
And let me add before I forget, there's a subtitle to the book called A Slice of Our Pre-AIDS Culture. And it was important to me to have that subtitle so that it kind of, you see the kind of cutesy, my gay American road trip, but wait, there's a serious side. This is the last look at our culture before AIDS hit. So this is
Right.
maybe a unique grab at it. I think mine is the only book to do that of that time, because then everything else was AIDS. All the other books were AIDS related after
Sure.
that. So I was getting serious, and my epilogue is quite serious because
Yes.
that's where the trip is over and I'm reflecting on the people I lost in the first 10 years after that. But the beginning is a long introduction, but most of the book is the journal. The journal I kept for 4.5 months from April to August of 81. And I got a millennial friend to transcribe this, Barrett White, poor Barrett. I paid him, but poor Barrett. He had to transcribe my handwritten ink, single spaced on a grid paper journal that was probably 150 pages. He transcribed it. Yay, good, because I didn't feel like doing that. And that was the first time I had read it in decades, because I didn't write this for anybody. I wrote it for me. I
Right.
didn't expect anybody to read it at all. And it's pretty personal. And I've really put myself out there. But skip ahead, I'm a historian now. And
Right.
I thought this has some value. This history I captured, maybe I didn't really think I was doing it that way, but I captured it. It has some value, and you shouldn't edit history. So it's pretty bare bones. And it doesn't get graphic. I tease about you never know who did what to whom, but it's all there. So
It's absolutely amazing. I love it. I've done what I've called I call them the big gay road trip from Ohio to Palm Springs. I've done 3 of those. So it's just, and I stop at different gay spots along the way, but it's literally a 3-day drive. We're talking over 4 months for yours. So
mhm.
how did you go about planning the trip? How did the trip come about? I mean, we have Elko, Nevada, and we have Baton Rouge, and we have Rochester, which you did live at, but not necessarily gay meccas. How did you decide on these locations around?
Well, I had a starting point. I was in Norfolk, Virginia, which is where I came out, and I moved to Norfolk in '78, and it came out a week later, and got quickly involved in the gay community, and pretty involved, to the point where I was editor of the gay newspaper within like a year after I came out. And it's like okay, crash course. So I was learning a lot. I was really coming into my own. And about that time, because I already knew how to cruise, I already knew what the bar scene was, but it was only Norfolk. And I was laid off my job at Virginia Chemicals, and I sold my townhouse, moved in with some friends. I had 2 things you very seldom have in life: time and money. And my dad said, "You should take a cross country trip." And then later he said, "You should keep a journal." And all right, I did, not because of him, but I thought it was a good idea. And really, it was surprising because I never remember him ever reading a book. For him to come up with "you should keep a journal" was pretty out there, but I didn't think about that at the time. Anyhow, I was in Norfolk, and I wanted to go through the South and the West. And so Norfolk, it's an obvious route: Chapel Hill, Atlanta, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Houston, Dallas, Albuquerque. Where's my list? Look at my table of contents. Albuquerque, Tucson, Phoenix, Las Vegas, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Denver, Omaha, Kansas City, Oklahoma City, back to Texas, there's a reason, Memphis, Columbus, Rochester, Philadelphia, back to Norfolk. A lot of it was planned. I knew I wanted to stop in Baton Rouge for a gay conference, the Southeast Conference of Lesbians and Gays. I had been to the one 2 years before in Chapel Hill, so I knew I wanted to go to that. And of course, I still had newspaper blood in me. I knew I wanted to write an article about that conference for the newspaper in Norfolk, our own community press. And so that was something I did often through the trip. I went to the Gay Press Association conference in Dallas, which was the second meeting of that organization. And that was really neat. That was meeting some of the main newspaper people of the time. They were all there, like Chuck Renslow from Chicago, Mark Siegel from Philadelphia. They were all there, and some of them were elected officers. It was a great experience. I was a busy beaver networking because I wanted to have contacts across country so I could stop and see their offices and also, ulterior motive, find out what was going on in these different cities, find out what I should see, what I can not bother to see. Like, for example, in San Diego, oh, JD, there's a gay play Friday night. Maybe you can get a ticket. I did, but that's how I knew about it. That happened in several places, and it got me connected all across the country. And so it was a very valuable tool that probably most people would not have. My newspaper networking and the newspaper angle was very important to me. If you read the Norfolk chapter, you can't escape hearing a lot about how the newspaper was made in Norfolk, Virginia in the late 70s. And that's never been captured either. So I thought that's important to go into detail.
Yeah, I love that you did that because I read about it in the different chapters how you would do that. Because I remember at the time, like I said, living in California, California was a big place. So there was the Spartacus and the Damron Guide, I think, for gay places,
Mm-hmm.
but very static at the time. It wasn't the internet really. You couldn't go on and see what was happening daily. So I thought
No,
that was very ingenious to find out what's happening as you're there. That was a great idea.
yeah, and those gay guides were quickly out of date because they had to
Yes,
be. They may be a year before they got each edition published. And
right.
okay, the bar's gone. Used to be here, no more.
Exactly. Well, I want to, like I said, I want to pay particular attention to California because you really brought me back from my early days there. As I said, that's when I first started going out. You talk about staying at the Coral Sands, and I stayed at the Coral Sands right there on
Great,
Western.
great.
I got actually my very first ticket going on Western onto Sunset Boulevard because I didn't supposedly stop at the red light fully or something. But that was a very weird industrial place for a gay hotel to be, I thought. What did you think
Yes,
about that
it was a.
experience?
I think I know I explained it in my book. Well, the neighborhood was kind of tacky, very tacky. And it was
Yes.
not an expected place, but also it was kind of like a Howard Johnson's. It was very captured. There was an internal courtyard, and there's two stories, and so there's rows of rooms too high, and a courtyard with a pool, gym equipment, blah blah blah, and people amazingly would just leave their doors open. I never figured that out.
Yes. I love it. Well, another great thing about the book is you have all these pictures from your different times and your different locations, and such a perfect capture of the gay man in the late 70s, early 80s with the mustache and the t-shirt and everything. I mean, you were quite the looker back then, so I'm sure that didn't hurt us all either.
I was able to attract a little attention, and also I was the new kid in town, in each town. So, but I'm glad you mentioned the images. The images in the book were very important to me, and I don't think too many memoirs have done it this way, where they're
Yeah.
capturing not just photos, but ads for bars, because those ads evoke the time. And my favorite example is that I went to Jules Tavern in New Orleans, and okay, I talk about that in 2.5 sentences, and I'm done. But there's the ad for Jules Tavern. Oh, you went to Jules Tavern. It's that kind of
Right.
bar. So the bar ads, the way they were done back in '81, they really evoke it. They take you there, and I think that's so important. And it was a luxury for me to do that. And my publisher very generously volunteered. These images need to be through the text. they need to be placed almost where you're reading about them, which is
Right.
a whole lot of work. And he wanted to do it that way because he thought that was important, and I was glad for it. Because okay, here's me climbing a statue and doing something naughty on top of the statue, and there's the picture. So the images were very important. And
I think
also
it's great. And like I said, you have over, I think, 140 of them or so throughout the book.
140, and the music
Yeah.
was important. I was commenting on music all through the book in the different cities as I went to I think it was the ballpark in Atlanta. What did I hear there? What struck me enough to write it down in these different cities? And I did this across the country, and they were all in the journal, so I could make a list when it was over. And I've made a Spotify playlist now. You can look that up. Anybody can look that up. They don't have to buy the book to see what I was listening to in 81 on my trip. And there's two lists. There's a disco list and there's a country list. When you're driving across Kansas, well, you're not hearing disco music. All you can get on the radio is country. And some of those were kind of important to the story, the way where my head was, because I had met a guy in Houston on the way west. We fell in love, and that story takes through the rest of the book. So that was something I did not plan, did not expect, but that was real. So I wrote about it.
Well, I wanted to bring that up. I mean, that's Clark, obviously. If haven't read the book yet, you meet Clark, and how difficult was it to continue with the trip, then to stop everything right then and there and follow your heart?
Um, the trip was a mission. So yes, I was going to finish the trip, of course. I spent probably 5 or 6 weeks in Houston, though. So I got a good exposure and a good taste of what Houston was like. I sometimes am asked later, well, why did you move to Houston? And I wasn't taking the trip thinking of looking for a place to live. I was in Norfolk 3 years. That was very good. I joked that, okay, 3 years, I've probably tricked with everybody I'm going to trick with in Norfolk. And that's making light of it. But I was looking for something a little larger. And what did I demand in a city? An organized gay community in the South. Hate the cold. So
Right.
what are the choices? Atlanta's kind of an island. Good city, kind of an island. It's 1,500 miles from everything else.
Right.
Houston, Dallas, LA is way too big. San Francisco, probably too cold for me because I hate cold.
Mhm.
Despite the magnetic charm of the city, it wasn't enough. So when I got home, I chose Houston, and a month later, I was here.
Right. You said something just now that I picked up on, that I'm very familiar with the word tricks. We used tricks a lot back in my high school, college days. That I was very familiar with, and that's kind of picking up somebody or having sex with somebody. You also talk about clones, though. I had never heard clones. Where did that come from?
That's interesting because uh, you're like the fourth person to mention that to me, that they weren't familiar with that. And after talking to Dennis Hensley on his show in LA, that finally hit to me. I need to explain this. So after Dennis's interview, I added a footnote explaining clone in the next printing of the book. So that'll cover it. But a clone was a style of dress, a style of being, a style of presenting yourself, usually with short hair, mustache, tight t-shirts, hopefully muscular, Levi jeans, and footnote, Levi jeans. Those 501s better have their bottom button unbuttoned because that
Tell
means you're
that story. I love that story. I didn't know that either.
And I mentioned that like 3 different times in my journal as I was, and I would go to somebody in a bar. I notice your bottom button is open. I wonder if it has the same connotation that it did in Atlanta, and it did. I had heard about it the year before from a friend in New York City, so I was just culturally following up on that trend, if you call it that. So that was something people didn't know about, younger people didn't know about. And the word clone was kind of a different turn. You might hear Castro clone, but it was nationwide. And in fact, Wikipedia has a Castro clone entry that you could read up on. But I was not aware that that word had not survived all these decades until I started being asked about it.
Very wild. Yeah, I had not heard that term. I had not known about the bottom button. I mean, when I was, like I said, I guess you might have had hanky codes more than I did. That was like going on its way out when
That
I
was kind
started
of
going out in
later
'82.
for me. That was
Yeah,
the 80s.
it's didn't know too much about that. The clones I understood because I remember when I was first at 18, I was getting into the porn a little bit there. You had the John Kings and the Jim Kings and his quote unquote brother and everything had that look down. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand the look you're talking about very much. I just never heard it called clone before.
And
So I
I was
thought
a
that was
clone.
new.
Look at my photos in the book.
Exactly. No, very much so.
Here's another
Yeah.
language story. Uh, I had an intern, a college intern, helping me edit a couple of years ago, and he was puzzled by the word chicken because I was quoting Armistead Maupin saying that Rock Hudson liked chicken, and my friend Jay Aurora didn't know what to make of that, and so I had to stop and think. I needed to explain this, and so I did with a couple words in the text. But that I had to add that to the journal text because it wasn't explained. And a chicken was a young guy. Rock Hudson liked young guys, but chicken didn't mean anything to my friend.
Chicken Hawk is definitely back in the day talk. I remember
Mm-hmm.
that. And then you brought up something earlier that I wanted to go back to because one of the great things I thought about the book is besides doing the playlist, all the addendums you did at the end, you talk about the music, you talk about other books that you read at the time. You have endnotes each chapter that kind of gives a little thing. I just love the extra detail you put in that, the map that draws everything.
Thank you.
That had to be kind of the fun part of doing the book as well, I would think.
I'm a historian. I was going to document things where I could, and like for example, there must have been 10 times I referred to articles written in our own community press in Norfolk that I sent back to them. Here's where you could find the actual newspaper and read that page. Right. So those are all links, internet links, where you can go, not just read it. Oh, there's a bothersome link that I'm never going to go to. It's on the internet. Click. You can find that article or whatever I was talking about.
What is the one city that you went to that was maybe unexpected, that you didn't expect to either like or dislike as much as you did? Any city surprise you with their gay culture?
Not quite the way you're asking. There were two cities in which I picked up two tricks the same day. Now, one of them might not be surprising, New Orleans. The other one probably is Salt Lake City. Yes.
Really?
Love those Mormons. They're horny.
They are the repressed ones, that's for sure. And you talk about the hookups. I mean, like I said, very tasteful book, but you had like 40 plus encounters throughout the book. What was that like
43.
to relive those memories?
43. Easy to count because they're written down. Some of them I still remember. Some of them not so much because it's been 42 years. I love the Leonard Matlovich one because I think I told that very well. And but then I have to explain to too many people. He was the Air Force sergeant that was kicked out of the Air Force for being gay, and he sued them. And it took a while, but he actually made a money settlement with the Air Force, and he used that money to buy a pizza place in Russian River. And he was on the cover of Time. They made a movie about him. He was a hero. And so this was a guy I met. I was introduced to him long distance, and we had a little sleepover. And and I think I told it rather slyly.
I love that story. That's amazing. What did you find? I mean, you've been doing websites forever and 20,000 pages. What was the challenges of going to book? I mean, that's got to be a whole different animal converting
Oh,
something into a book. How was that learning curve?
it's a big curve, and it probably took longer than it needed to, but it was from the time I got my friend Barrett to transcribe it. It's been almost 5 years because I showed it to a couple of different people who I consider mentors, who gave me notes, detailed notes on, what about this? And you want to explain this a little better, and this might be misunderstood. The things I wouldn't think about because I was too close to the material. Because it's
Mm,
hard to be objective about what you wrote, especially 40 years ago.
mm.
So, and having an intern work for a summer and then work with a publisher, getting a publisher to begin with was hard. I sent proposals out to a number of publishers specializing in LGBT books, and about half of them gave me no reply at all. How rude, but no reply, and I'm sure they get plenty. But and the other half would give you like bring out template number 3. We're sorry that your book's material does not meet our market at the time. So I got one guy, I respected his honesty. He said, we have several memoirs, and we're really not doing a good job promoting the ones we have. That was refreshing.
That's
So
nice to hear. Yeah.
yeah, that was good. So it's been a long time. The publisher has actually been working since only September 1st. So that's not bad. Remember, he had to put 140 images through the pages of the book. And there's been lots of editing. We're still finding typos, still. Like yesterday, a friend sent me, oh, here's 2 more typos. Oh, God. And the printer, they give you like 60 days from the first printing to update the file, the e-proof, and correct changes, like adding footnotes, misspellings, and mostly it's tiny things like missing a 2 or an A, things like that.
Right.
That I'm too familiar with it. I roll right over it. I will never see it, but I'm not fresh eyes. So we're right at the edge of that 60 days to getting not final errors, because I'm sure there's more that no one's pointed out, but it's a long process. And now the hard part, the promotion. I've never promoted a book, and this is a lot. It's a lot to try and put yourself out there. I don't know if you can tell, I'm an introvert. I don't like public speaking. I don't volunteer for it. And mostly I turn it down. I get asked several times each year to talk at Pride things, and no thanks. There are other people that can do that. So I don't reach out for it. But now I have to, because I have to put myself out there. I'm the only one that can do this. I'm the only one
Right.
that can sell this book.
Yeah, that's the downsides of a autobiography-ish book is it's your story. No one else is going to be able to tell your story like you can, or be able to at least answer any questions on it. So, do you think you see a book tour in your future? I mean, going back to any of these places, to the bookstores there,
Well,
would you like to revisit any of them?
no one's going to pay for a book tour. People have this illusion of what publishers pay for. They don't, especially since COVID. They're not promoting books like they used to. And my publisher is not Simon and Schuster. I don't have any book money. I got no advances. It's all been out of pocket. The book owes me money and will for a little while to just break even. So no, I would have to sell a hell of a lot of books in Oklahoma City or wherever to even pay for the trip. Period. And that's doesn't sound feasible. I want to mention something we're going to leave out. You see
Right.
this? The cover of the book. I love this cover. Comes from a photo in the book of me taken in Los Angeles at the
Frank Lloyd Wright's
Frank
place.
Lloyd Wright.
Yeah.
Yes, blank for a minute. He has there was a park made honoring him in LA, very nice park. And a photo was taken of me among the statues and things. And it's a great photo, my favorite from the book. But I took that photo and asked an artist friend of mine to do his own impression of the photo. And he did a great job, just great. And it's a very sexy cover. You can see the bottom button unbuttoned. And I'm sure it sells books. I'm sure the cover has sold books. And the publisher very smartly has cut the image off. You can still see it behind me, just above the mustache. You can see where it's cut off, adding some mystery. So I've taken that into sort of an internet game that I've tried to promote, where people would hold the book up in front of themselves. How can I do this? I probably can't. Like that? Does that help?
Oh, that's perfect right there. Yeah.
All right.
I like
so
it.
I've hold it up, take a picture, and I've conned some of my friends, maybe 20 of them so far, to do that with their copies of the book. And please let that go viral, because that would be such great publicity. So I've been posting those on Instagram and so forth.
Well, that was going to be the last thing I talk about, because I did find the cover fascinating. I just thought it was amazingly well done. And we're going to play out on that. I didn't know about the little thing. We're going to have to see if we can make that happen. That would be amazing. Try to put that up for our interview here. Well, JD, it's been amazing getting to talk to you about this. Where do we go from here? Is it just now book promotion time? Do we have to get back into our archiving, or what's on the next couple of months?
I've definitely taken a back seat for a while, and there's things I'm already working on or still working on. I have a digitation project I'm going to do for our local magazine, Outsmart, that I've arranged it to be the first 20 years of it to be digitized. It's not now digitized, and that needs to be available so people can read the 1994 through 2014 issues online, and which means I have to box those books up, or those magazines up. I have every one of them, of course, and send those to, in this case, Birmingham, Alabama, where they will be digitized by a wonderful group called Invisible Histories Project, where Megan and Josh are running a lot of history archival work for the entire South. I don't know how they get it all done, but we've been in talks for almost a year about this, and finally they're ready. So I better be ready now too. So I'm going to ship those out in the next few days.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, let everyone know where they can find your website, where the books are sold. I'm sure where all good books are sold, but let them know where they can find your other projects as well with your main website for the archives.
It's pretty easy. There's an umbrella website called JD Doyle Archives.org. And from there, you can click to the four main sites. You can click to a lot of other places too, in my domains. The book, the big dog, of course, is Amazon, and there's a special link for that maybe you can give that in your follow-up. But
sure.
Of course, Barnes & Noble has it. Any bookstore can order you the book. Any bookstore in the country, because our printer pushes them out everywhere.
Nice.
Like, I'm not Amazon's customer. I'm the printer's customer. So right. I get feedback and data from them, not from Amazon.
Well, good luck to you, my friend. JD Doyle, I think it's a fantastic book. Thank you for giving me a little a preview of it. I'm going to finish the entire thing. Like I said, I've gone through about 6 chapters, quite a bit left to do, 300 pages, worth every bit, my friends. Thank you so much for being on the Left of Str8 Show today.
Thank you. This is my first video interview on the book, so there you go.
There you go. I like it. All right, well, stay on the line for me. Guys, be sure to check out all the information on JD. We're going to have a special 5 questions with next Tuesday, so be sure to tune in for that. We appreciate listening to the Left of Str8 Show. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Left of Str8 Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media and be sure to check out our website, www.leftofstraightradio.com, for contests and other news and information. See you next week.